Thank you all for attending. Thank you all very much for bearing with us in our technology problems. This is the first in a series of 6 webinars that we are going to be holding. I certainly hope we can get the technology figured out before the next one. The 6 are going to focus on the National Project for Excellence in Environmental Education, which is an initiative of the North American Association for Environmental Education. And as those of you who have been listening in know, probably, that I am Bora Simmons, and I am the director of the National Project for Excellence in Environmental Education, and I'm based in Eugene, Oregon.
And this is Andrea Walker Bravo, and I am the Executive Director for the Utah Society for Environmental Education. We are an affiliate group of the NAAEE, and I am here to help out Bora with the webinar.
What we wanted to do is give you a very quick tour of the webinar site, just so that you know what some of the functions are that you can play with. Obviously, most of you have figured out about chat, but it's basically pretty easy. You just go down to the bottom little box here and type in what you would like. If you go up to this little icon at the very top of chat, there's a pull-down box. So if you have eyes like I do and you can't read the baby type, you can actually change your type size, and you can also give yourself a color if you would like to color code yourself one way or the other. Also, up at the top of the box, there is a little black ribbon, and you have a couple of different icons there. One of them is a little man with his arm held up, and you can raise your hand, you can tell us to speak louder or more softer, things like that. And somebody has raised their hand. And let's see if we can figure out who did and what you would like. Just testing, I guess. Okay. So those are just, a very, very quick bit about how this functions. And please do raise your hand if you you need something as we move along in it, or use the chat function. That would be quite helpful. We did not enable for you folks your mics, and for kind of obvious reasons that we have enough technology problems on our side. And the echo seems to have gone away. We love that. So, onward. Andrea? Well, I think I may have lost Andrea in the process of this. But what we would like you to do is first to take a short poll and tell us a little bit about yourselves. So click on the button that makes sense for you, and we'll have a sense of who's here.
So that we can get to know you a little bit better, and then we can potentially speak more directly to you as our audience as we're going through this. So we have a couple of polls here for you to do. And I will open up this poll.
Oh. Well, but some people are, because they're filling it out. And then I couldn't hear you for a while, which is why I went on to the poll. Yes, I am.
Bora, are you there?
So now, Andrea. Oops.
Why the poll's not coming up? Hold on. Can you all see the poll? Has it just disappeared for me?
Okay, so it looks as if we have a pretty nice mix of people across uh, different areas where you teach in urban, suburban, and rural areas. So,
Bora, if you can hear me, my computer is not doing anything. It's not functioning. Are you there?
yeah, I am. Well, this.
Somehow I just got super delayed.
Yeah, it's really strange. It seems that the. Yeah. It seems as if we've got a really strange thing going on where when people can hear me, they can't hear, or I can't hear Andrea and onward. So we're going to just keep trying to plow through this and see how far we can get without driving everybody totally crazy. Okay, thank you all for filling out our quick poll. This gives us a sense of who you are. As we kind of expected, we thought that we would have a lot of people who are non-formal educators of one sort or another, but we are happy to hear that there are others in the crowd too. And different pieces of this program will apply to different people and your settings. Let me tell you just a little bit about our program, and we always love to honor the people who have been our sponsors. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the Office of Environmental Education has been a primary sponsor of the National Project for Excellence since its very beginning in the early 1990s. And we are part of the EE Capacity Project, which is funded by U.S. EPA, and it is the National Environmental Education Training Project. Other partners that we have is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service, National Environmental Education Foundation. We have been pleased to have partners such as the Utah Society for Environmental Education, the various state environmental education affiliates or associations, and we have a number of other organizational partners, and these are just examples of Project Learning Tree and the Arbor Day Foundation, Project Wild, Keep America Beautiful, Project WET, and such. So I'm wondering whether Andrea can speak.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. I had to log out and log back in. I'm not sure what happened. I apologize for that. Technology is always frustrating. So really the primary purpose behind the Project for Excellence in Environmental Education is to promote excellence in environmental education, to set standards for high quality environmental education, and really to strengthen the environmental education field as a whole. This project isn't something that Bora sat at her desk and did and wrote all on her own. This was definitely something that was done as a group process. It was through our collective wisdom, the collective wisdom of the field of environmental educators and stakeholders throughout the nation and beyond. Really, the guidelines were developed through a public participatory process. A lot of people worked on this. It engaged environmental educators and all educators in deep discussions about the quality, high quality environmental education practices, and it also helped to build environmental ed as a profession.
Okay, for this next little bit, what we would like to ask you to do is take another poll. And this is just to get your sort of general sense on which of the following describes some aspect of environmental education. And you can check as many boxes as you would like. We're being quiet at the moment, Kevin, so you may not hear anything. It's interesting to see the bars expand across as people check the boxes. And I will broadcast the results so others can see what's going on here. It looks as if there's a fair amount of consistency across folks and agreement in terms of what are some of the major components of environmental education. I'll give you just another quick bit to finish up as you wish, and then we'll move on to the next slide.
So, Bora, this is Andrea. The echo, I think, is coming from my computer. So I think what I'm going to have to do to make this work for everybody is mute my speakers, so I won't be able to hear you. I will just try to pay attention to when it's my turn to jump in, but I think it seems like the echo is causing a lot of problems. So I will mute myself, and again, maybe you'll have to raise the hand if you need me to jump in, okay?
That sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
All right. We do seem to be having this back and forth with Andrea. When Andrea is on and I'm on, we have echo, and we're not really quite sure why this is happening. But basically, what I asked you in terms of the little poll just before were some general statements that we use within the National Project for Excellence to describe what people have basically told us are these essential underpinnings of environmental education, things that are sort of common across just about every sector of environmental education. A belief that systems are important and that systems thinking is something that we want to make sure is included within environmental education. Systems are large and they're complex, and we need to be able to understand the relationships and interactions amongst all the various parts and understand that there are systems that are nested within other systems. Interdependence is another one of those major pieces that we have within environmental education, that humans are bound to our environmental quality, that we're part of the natural world, and that we have created our own sets of systems, our social systems and political systems that interact with natural and physical systems. The importance of where we live, that we're building that sensitivity and knowledge and skills within our local area and our connection to our local area as a base for moving into larger systems and broader understandings and understanding of issues and at the global level as an example. Another important piece of environmental education is this idea that environmental education is integrated and infused. And if you're working in a K-12 or a K-16 environment, that we are not in a disciplinary silo, that we actually move across and we draw upon and we contribute to the various disciplines. The next sort of underpinning is this notion of roots in the real world, that we want to make sure people have direct experiences with the environment and environmental issues and society, and that they are investigating and analyzing and problem solving, that those are all essential activities. And then the final is this notion of lifelong learning, that education and learning don't start when you leave the classroom, and that in fact key to environmental education is not only the birth to gray notion, but also that we're trying to help people develop critical thinking and creative thinking, problem solving skills that they are going to use throughout their lifetimes. And able to continue to learn about the environment.
Okay, I think we've figured out the microphone problem, so I hope everyone's hearing things okay. You may be thinking, as you were listening to Bora talk about the essential underpinnings of environmental education, those are general things that are very, very important to our environmental education programs, but how are those completely necessarily relevant in our day-to-day jobs and everything you do? So what we wanted to do for this next one is have you take another quick poll. Pull it up here for you. And so if you guys want to take a minute to do this, so in your job, and please check all the things that you do. Things are still changing here. We have one person with a hand raised. Maria, if you want to type your question into the chat, or what you need, we can hopefully address that. All right, well, it looks like, I'll go ahead and broadcast this poll here, but it looks like most of you develop and use other organizations' instructional materials. Some of you work with preschool students, some of you work with K through 12, quite a few of you do professional development, and many, many of you develop non-formal environmental ed programs. So, the reason why this is relevant is that those things directly lead into the 5 different publications in the Guidelines for Excellence series. There are material guidelines, learner guidelines, preparation and professional development guidelines, non-formal guidelines, and early childhood guidelines. And Bora will walk you through these different guidelines.
This is where it's going to get a little tricky of going back and forth, just to tell the audience this, to bear with us a little bit more, is that I want to give you an overview of each of the guidelines, and then Andrea is going to jump in with some examples that she has used in her life and work. So the first set of guidelines that we developed have to do with developing environmental education materials. And basically what this document gives you are a set of recommendations for selecting quality environmental education materials, tools for evaluating those environmental education materials, and very importantly, if you are involved with developing instructional materials, things that you might want to think about. In this particular case, these guidelines are divided into what we call key characteristics. So each of these, there are 6 of them, 6 key characteristics describe the what those component parts of quality environmental education materials might be. So, Andrea?
Okay. And I just wanted to give an example with these materials guidelines. When I was in, this is a personal example, when I was in graduate school, I developed a curriculum of 11 lesson plans, all based around watershed science and water quality monitoring, stream testing, kind of the thing you guys, I'm sure you've all seen. But I was modifying a program that had consisted, before I was in grad school, I was modifying it to better meet the needs of teachers. And I spent probably a good year working on this curriculum, holding focus groups, working with teachers, working with our State Department of Education Department, and just going back and forth until I had really fine-tuned this set of lesson plans and materials, and so that everyone, they really liked it. They felt like it was a very solid resource. And after I was done with that, after I'd spent all that time, I learned about the guidelines and the guidelines for developing materials. And I have to say that if I would have had the guidelines for materials before I started grad school, it would have been so much easier, because everything that I learned the hard way by going through focus groups and working with teachers and evaluating and reevaluating was all really laid out in the guidelines for excellence for materials development. So I would say that it's very valuable for those developing materials, and it's very, very valuable for those using other people's materials if you want to really know that it's high quality.
Thank you, Andrea. The second set of guidelines that we developed are called the Excellence in Environmental Education Guidelines for Learning. And basically what they are is the equivalent to, and they're modeled off of national disciplinary standards. So the science standards, social studies, mathematics, geography standards. And what they basically do is they lay out expectations of what students should know and be able to do by the end of 4th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade, if they're on the road to becoming environmentally literate. It's basically a framework that you can use within your programs, whether it's a non-formal environmental education program or a K-12 program, to basically say, well, what components of environmental literacy am I addressing, and how might I go about addressing them a bit better. One of the other things that was really important as we were developing this set of guidelines is that we did recognize, and we thought very consciously about the notion that we were developing these in the mid to late 90s. We were moving very heavily into a standards-based curriculum in the K-12 public schools in the United States. And we knew that teachers and other educators were going to need to be able to show how environmental education would support meeting those other traditional standards. And so we've done a lot of cross-referencing with these guidelines against other standards to make sure that people can truly integrate it into their curriculum easily. The third set of guidelines that we developed have to do with us, the environmental educators of the world. And our thinking was that if we could start to describe what good quality instructional materials might look like, and we could start to describe what we were hoping that the learner was going to be building in terms of their environmental literacy, that we probably needed to address ourselves as professionals. And so this set of guidelines basically lays out recommendations about the knowledge and abilities for environmental educators if they're going to provide high quality environmental education, instruction, and programs. It's the question of what is it that educators should know and be able to do if they're going to provide environmental education.
And this set of guidelines is something that I use with the Utah Society for Environmental Education quite a bit. A quick question for everybody, and maybe you can respond in the chat. Is there anyone out there that has gone through one of their state programs and is a certified environmental educator? Great. Wonderful. So we've got a couple. For those that aren't certified environmental educators, are you aware of, if your state has the program or not? There are a handful of states out there that actually have a environmental educator certification program. And Utah is one of those, and we base our entire certification program off of this document. It's the logical place to start for a certification program. We obviously tweak things a little bit so that folks in Utah have kind of local state knowledge, but this is definitely the basis of our environmental education certification program, as is true with all of the other states. It's either these guidelines specifically or a slight variation upon them, but everyone is really rooted off of these same documents.
Great, thank you, Andrea. And there's just a couple of questions in there. Yes, Texas does have a certification program. So you can contact your state association, which I believe is the Texas Association for Environmental Education, TAEE. And yes, as you can see in the chat, there are a lot of different programs out there that are a lot of different states that have developed their certification programs. Maryland, Georgia, Nevada. Illinois does not. I see on the chat there. The next set of guidelines, since the majority of you are non-formal environmental educators, you should know that this set of guidelines is specifically geared towards you and specifically geared towards the notion of how do you go about developing and then implementing quality non-formal environmental education programs. And it's a tool that is useful for evaluating programs that you already have in place so that you can sort of check the process that you've used and the components of your program. And it's also a way of sort of making sure that as you develop new programs, you are taking into consideration all of the myriad of factors that make up a quality program, from a needs assessment at the very beginning to thinking about the curriculum framework that you're going to be using, the instructional materials, the staff development that you might need, all of those factors all the way through the process. And then the final set of guidelines that we have developed, and they are our newest, we published them in 2010, and they focus on early childhood environmental education. And as the title probably gives you a little bit of a hint, their recommendations, key characteristics of developing and implementing quality early childhood programs. And in this, we're talking about programs that are geared towards very young children from birth to age 8, but they really focus most mostly on children that are 3 to 6 years old. So they're a little bit beyond toddlers and maybe getting into kindergarten. And it lays out all of the different pieces of what you might want to consider. If you, as a non-formal educator, are going to an early childhood center to provide programs, or if you're working with an early childhood program to develop there. So it talks about using the outdoors and nature and bringing nature inside. It talks about an appropriate framework for education at that age, developmentally appropriate practice, and such.
And we use this particular guide quite a bit with our Project Learning Tree and Project Wild early childhood training programs. Is anyone that's on there on the chat, do any of you run your PLT or Project Wild programs, or do you participate in them or offer them as trainings? What we've found is that Project Learning Tree and Project Wild have specific early childhood curricula, and it's been really great for us to be able to pair a Project Learning Tree or Project Wild early childhood training with the guidelines for excellence in environmental ed. It really kind of bolsters the training program to say, hey, here's some great tools and lesson plans and resources you can use, and here are some guidelines for how to make these programs really great and how to really think about the differences when teaching the early childhood crowd versus the normal children's programs that you might do. I've also found this as a really valuable guide for my staff as they're getting ready to teach programs, because I think the early childhood audience can be an intimidating one for some folks, and having this as a resource, and even just having my staff read through it, I think it helps them be better prepared to teach to a broader range of audiences.
And some of the folks are in the chat mentioning Project Wild has grown as Wild, Project Learning Tree has an early childhood activity guide, and these are wonderful. We've been working in cooperation with both of those, as well as materials that are developed out of the Arbor Day Foundation. So there's some wonderful, wonderful environmental education materials that are available out there for teaching early childhood environmental education. And these guidelines are just sort of an added treat to that whole suite of activities that are available of getting young children involved.
Okay. And so as a whole, something that I wanted to mention, the Utah Society for Environmental Education, like many of the state nonprofits for environmental education, we're a non-advocacy group. The slide that you're looking at, you're seeing kind of our vision and our mission, and then some of the different things that we're focusing on in this round of our strategic plan. So those are things like professionalizing environmental education, informing decision making for our state and on a larger scale, facilitating partnerships between organizations in Utah and beyond, and communicating environmental education accomplishments. And as I was thinking about the guidelines, they are definitely something that I fall back on quite a bit. I really feel that they can serve as an umbrella for the Utah Society for Environmental Education, really in a lot of different ways. I've given some examples of how they tie into specific programs and ideas, but I wanted to give a larger example that happened last year. There was a curriculum that was being developed that was a petroleum literacy curriculum. It was being funded by our Office of Gas and Mining, and it kind of became a big issue. It got some press that they were putting out this curriculum kind of touting the benefits of petroleum, and we started getting phone calls where people were asking me to stand up and say that this isn't right, that this is propaganda, or to say something against this curriculum, to say that this isn't good education. But being a non-advocacy group, that was something that I was not comfortable doing. I was not comfortable taking a stand on either side of those issues because that's not what my organization does. However, because of the guidelines, I was able to go meet with the representative. This was actually during our legislative session. Meet with the representative who was proposing this petroleum literacy curriculum, and tell him, I'm not going to pass judgment on your curriculum, but I would like to show you the guidelines for excellence in environmental education. So if you are going to make this curriculum, here's how you can make it to be the best curriculum for students, to be fair and balanced, to have the factual information, to use good pedagogy and good development practice for your programs. And it really allowed me to take a stand and move forward on something that could potentially be poor environmental education without really putting myself or my organization at risk, because I had these larger guidelines and these larger standards to fall back on. And we end up doing it quite a bit with my organization. Everything that we do comes back to the guidelines. We make sure that any of our programs, anything that we have out there really can be held up by the guidelines. So I think that by using them as a whole and by relying on them, they can definitely strengthen an organization and help provide validity if needed.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay. So what we wanted to do this afternoon was just provide a brief overview of the National Project for Excellence in Environmental Education. And we thought that, well, chances are you might well want to do a bit more exploration and learn a bit more about the project. And here are a couple of different ways that you can do it. One thing is, currently we have this EPA funding, and we are able to offer workshops throughout the country, primarily actually we can offer workshops in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And we have Guidelines Trainers Bureau members. These are folks who have gone through a facilitator training process. Andrea is in fact one of our trainers, but we have trainers that are based pretty much across the United States. So if you're interested in having a workshop on some aspect of the Project for Excellence, please just get in touch with me and we can see what we can work out. We have a second way that you can access information about the project, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. It's through something called EE Linked up on the web. And then the third thing is to attend another webinar. We are going to be holding 5 more webinars, each of the webinars focusing on one of the sets of guidelines. What I have up on the screen right now is just a screenshot of the Guidelines for Excellence network on something called EE Linked, and I'll give you that URL and something you can read a little bit better in a moment. But basically on this website you can read about different aspects of the project, new initiatives that we have, new documents that we have. And one of the things that is really nice for you is that you can download all of the documents for free. They're in PDFs. So if it's something that you just want to be able to take a look at them and read them and share them with somebody else, please just go on up to the website and click on it and download it. One of the things that I wanted to point out, just because a couple of people, somehow I think I saw Puerto Rico mentioned as it was flying by in the chat, both the materials guidelines as well as the non-formal guidelines have been translated into Spanish, and there are PDFs available of those up on the website. And there is the URL that will get you to EE Linked. It's pretty simple, and then you just navigate around and go to the topic that you're most interested in. If you're interested in the materials guidelines, you click on that on the left-hand side. If you're interested in the preparation and professional development guidelines, click on that. We also have a bunch of other things up there, including the list of people who are Trainers Bureau members, those facilitators, and what states they're in. So you can skim through that, and you may well find that you've got a trainer in your state. We've got people in North Carolina, Texas, California, Oregon, obviously Utah, New York, lots of people up in New England. So there are a lot of different options there in terms of being able to find out more about the project. And then this will tell you a little bit about the future webinars and the dates. We'll be posting this information and how you can access the webinars up on the EE Linked website so that you can get it there. We'll also be sending it out into listservs and up on Facebook and through NAAE and such, probably the same ways that you got information about this one today. And I promise we'll try our best to get our technology issues under control. What I wanted to tell you about was one other thing is that, so we have all of these sets of guidelines right now, but we're in the process of developing a new set of guidelines that are going to focus on community environmental education. And Akima Price, who is a consultant but has worked quite a bit in New York City and in Washington, D.C., and she is a part of the EE Capacity Program. She is taking the lead on the development of the community EE guidelines. She's been holding a number of roundtables around the country to let people know about the process and to get input into the development of the new guidelines. So if you'd like more information about it, you can either email me or email Akima, and we can try to make sure that you are involved with the process. And this is a chance for just a few minutes of questions. So if you want to type in a question into the chat function, we will try to do our very best to answer them. And while you're doing that, I just want to thank everybody for participating in the process today. We have recorded it, hopefully without echo, but we'll see. And we'll be posting the recording so that folks can come back. Okay, so we have a question. How is it possible to get copies of the various guidelines? You have 3 different options on getting copies. One is to go up onto the website and just download it and print it off. There are various links, so printing is always an issue. If you would like to have a hard copy with the pretty cover and all of that, you have 2 options with that. One is through NAAEE, the North American Association for Environmental Education. They sell copies at cost, and you can order copies through them. The other way that you can get a copy of them is through the Environmental Protection Agency. So if you go up to, if you Google, give them a plug. If you Google Environmental Protection Agency, US EPA, Office of Environmental Education, and then you just sort of look around on that website, there will be a link to their resources, and you can order up to 10 copies of each of the sets of guidelines for free, and they will ship them to you. So you can download them, so immediate gratification. You can purchase them through NAAEE, or you can go up to the EPA website and order them through their clearinghouse. Let's see. So there's a question about examples of where the workshops might be given in New York City. That's sort of one of those, it depends on who's interested. We try our best to develop workshops that are focused on the audience. So if somebody has an audience of 30 classroom teachers and they can find us the venue, we will bring a facilitator in and provide the books for free. And as long as we have the grant, I got to give that as the caveat. So as long as we have funding for it, that's what we could do is focus on a particular set of guidelines. So say the K-12, if you're working with classroom teachers, or the non-formal guidelines, or whichever one. So we try to focus each of the workshops on the needs of the particular group. We've done workshops in New York. We've done them in New York City in the past, although it's been a while. Okay, any other questions? Got lots of people typing. Wonderful. So I think I'm going to ring us off at this point. And oops, wait a second. So there were two questions. So the first question, it's gone off my screen. It was sort of the question about who might benefit other than formal educators. And we have done a lot of workshops for non-formal educators using the non-formal guidelines. Specifically for non-formal educators that might be going in and working with early childhood. We've used the K-12 guidelines with non-formal educators so that they can think about their programs and think about how they're structuring them. So what sequence and age appropriateness. So it's across the board. We've done workshops with pre-service teachers, with graduate students, all sorts of different folks.
Bora, I would also say I think pre-service teachers would be great, getting them into this. I also think seasonal staff or kind of those new to the field, I've always really felt that if I were able to hire someone or soon after hiring them to teach for me, to design programs for me, whatever it is, this is a great way to introduce them to these guidelines and really get them to understand it and get them that information right up front so they don't have to struggle through things like many of us did.
Thank you, Andrea. There's a question about getting in contact with the people in Mexico who have used the guidelines. We've actually done quite a few workshops along the border. Pepe Marcos has done the majority of those workshops because he's originally from Mexico, so he's bilingual, which is really, really helpful. And the government of Mexico translated and has republished the guidelines. So they are being distributed and used in Mexico. If you email me and you want to be connected or learn more about what's happened in Mexico, I can connect you to Pepe, and he would be able to give you some of the more specific connections and such. The question is the May 1st. Yes, there are a couple of differences on times for the webinars. To note that the next one is at 5 p.m. And then the May 1st one is at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So, and that was to avoid conflicts with someone's schedule because they teach in the afternoon and they couldn't be on the webinar as a presenter and teaching at the same time. So, thank you very much. If there aren't any more questions, I think we'll ring off. And hi there to Liz. Yes, NIU. I taught at Northern Illinois University for many, many years, so that's what that comment is about. Again, would really like to thank you all for participating in the webinar. I hope it's been helpful in giving you an overview of the project and at least some insight into it and how the different pieces are used. And I certainly want to thank Andrea for taking time. UC, the Utah Society for Environmental Education, has been one of the strongest supporters of the guidelines during its entire history. And Andrea has been just super as a Guidelines Trainers Bureau member and as an advocate for the guidelines. So thank you all very much, and I appreciate it. And I guess it's probably time to just ring off.
Thanks, Bora. It looks like there is one last request to email out the schedule.
To email it out. The problem is we don't necessarily have your emails. We're going to try to take care of that with future webinars and ask people to register, and so then we'll have their email addresses. But what I will do is I'll go back to that previous slide. If you go up to the EE linked site in a few days, then I will post up there the schedule, and I'll post the links that you'll need to go to be able to register for it. But it'll be pretty much the same sort of thing of that you just come to this site. It'll be a slightly different URL, and then put in, come in as a guest and all of that.
And Bora, I just tossed up my email address so people can email me and I can send the schedule.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And let me I'm clicking forward on the things. Just as a last little advertisement here, hope to see many of you at the NAAE conference in Oakland this fall. The call for presentations is open, and we'll be there presenting about the guidelines, but there will be 1,000 or so other environmental educators at the conference to network with and learn from. So it's a great conference. Certainly hope to see you then. So one more time, thank you all and appreciate it, and hope that you'll be able to participate in a future webinar.